From New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I am Ramesh Ramachandran. Coming up in the next hour. UN General Assembly President says Security Council reform is absolutely necessary. Claims that in challenging times when UNGA is divided, India can take the lead in bridging the differences. Russian plane carrying 65 Ukrainian prisoners of war, 6 crew and 3 others crashes in Russia's Belgorod region bordering Ukraine. Thailand court clears former Prime Ministerial hopeful Peter Limjaroenrat of violating election rules in the first of 2 cases against him. And India's Rohan Bopanna makes history, becomes world #1 at the age of 43, reaches the semi-finals of the Australian Open men's doubles. Now, what do Elon Musk and the UN General Assembly President have in common? Well, both say categorically that it is high time India became a permanent UN Security Council member. Now, India has been pushing for reform of the world body for years on end. India believes that no reform of the UN is complete without the composition of the Security Council changing to reflect contemporary realities of the 21st century. Now, this requires expansion in the membership of the Security Council in both the permanent and non-permanent categories. Akshay Dongre reports.
UN General Assembly President Dennis Francis described India as a reliable and highly regarded partner. Francis, who's on a 5-day visit to India, said the UN appreciated India for contributing the largest number of peacekeeping forces to UN operations.
Reform of the Council is absolutely necessary. If you are in a privileged position, you are not necessarily in a hurry to lose privilege. Reform is inescapable. The question then becomes, what is the formula by which this reform would take place? India has been a long-standing partner of the United Nations. India, in fact, contributes one of the largest numbers of peacekeepers to the system. And that is emblematic of India's commitment to multilateralism and to the values and principles that are enshrined in multilateralism.
He held talks with India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar on Wednesday. On 1st June 2023, the UN General Assembly elected Dennis Francis of Trinidad and Tobago as the president of its 78th session, which runs from September 2023 until September 2024. Francis lauded India as one of the UN's oldest partners. He said that the UN expects India to take the lead in bridging differences amid challenging times.
India is already a key player both globally and at the United Nations. As the world's largest democracy where unity in diversity has endured for many years, India can relate very easily to principles of universality. UN membership is more divided. As President of the General Assembly, I look to India to lead the charge in our quest to repair the trust deficit among member states.
India has been pushing for UN reform in general and Security Council in particular. India, Germany, Brazil and Japan, which make up the Group of 4 or G4, are seeking a permanent UN Security Council seat. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has called for reformed multilateralism, one that would make world bodies such as the UN reflect today's realities. Prime Minister Modi has said, I quote, "A mid-20th century approach cannot serve the world in the 21st century. So our international institutions need to recognize changing realities, expand their decision-making forums, relook at their priorities and ensure representation of voices that matter," unquote. India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar told the 78th UNGA session in September 2023 that the Summit of the Future to be hosted by the UN in 2024 needs to act quickly. Minister Jaishankar said, I quote, "This should serve as a serious opportunity to drive change, champion fairness and reform multilateralism, including the expansion of the Security Council memberships. We must address global challenges imbued with the conviction that we are one Earth and one family with one future," unquote. The UN Security Council was formed in the aftermath of the Second World War. It was established in January 1946 to maintain international peace and security. After the Second World War ended, the US and the Soviet Union emerged as the main victors against Germany, Italy and Japan. Along with them, the UK also shaped the post-war political order. The then US President Franklin Roosevelt vouched for the inclusion of the Republic of China. The UK wanted France in the grouping. This is how the UN Security Council got its permanent 5 or P5 countries. To become a permanent UNSC member, a country will need the backing of 2/3 of the members of the UN General Assembly and all the P5 nations. While the first requirement is relatively easy to achieve, the second is tough. This is so because all 5 permanent members hold veto power. Thus, if one country decides against a proposal, it will not be passed even if the other 4 reach a consensus. However, before all this, the original UN Charter signed in 1945 needs to be amended to pave the way for the expansion of permanent UNSC seats. There are permanent and non-permanent members of the UN Security Council. A total of 15 members are there in the Council, out of which 5 are permanent and 10 are not permanent. The 10 non-permanent members are elected for 2-year terms by the UN General Assembly. 5 non-permanent UNSC members are replaced every year. India has been a non-permanent UNSC member on 8 occasions. Tesla founder Elon Musk weighed in on the issue by posting a message on his X account that India's absence from the UN Security Council is absurd. Musk said, I quote, "At some point there needs to be a revision of the UN bodies. Problem is that those with excess power don't want to give it up. India not having a permanent seat on the Security Council despite being the most populous country on earth is absurd," unquote. As Minister Jaishankar told the UN General Debate last year, the days when a few nations set the agenda and expected others to fall in line are over.
With the recent outbreaks of conflicts around the world that threaten to destabilize the world peace, the clamor for reforms in the United Nations Security Council is once again growing. Be it India, world's most populous country, or the entire continents of South America and Africa having no representation in this decision-making body of the United Nations, reforms have become a need of time for a more stable and prosperous world. With camera person Tangaraj, Amakshi Dongre, DD India.
The President of the 78th session of the UN General Assembly, Dennis Francis, delivered the 47th Sapru House lecture in New Delhi. He spoke about the significance of multilateral institutions and advocated for UN reform to align itself with the contemporary global paradigm.
Urgent need for reform of the multilateral system. Let us face the facts. It is no longer 1945. Our institutions cannot remain stuck in the past and at the same time hope to fix the challenges of today using a toolkit of yesterday. The call to reform the Security Council was again raised by a resounding number of world leaders at the opening of the General Assembly's 78th session.
India's permanent representative to the United Nations in New York, Ruchira Kamboj, highlighted the necessity of UN reforms matching the global changes and aspirations.
The UN's focus this year on the Summit of the Future, an initiative to reimagine and revitalize the United Nations, a UN 2.0, if you will, is a testament to our shared commitment to adapt and evolve. This pivotal moment in history does indeed call for a renewed United Nations, one that responds effectively to the ever-changing landscape of global needs and aspirations. We simply cannot afford to fail.
India is all prepared for the 75th Republic Day celebrations at the iconic Kartavya Path in the heart of the country's capital, New Delhi. From army parades to cultural tableau of India's states and union territories, it's set to grace this year's event. While Delhi Police has also issued the Traffic Day Advisory. Here is a detailed report.
India is all set to celebrate Republic Day on January 26th. Republic Day marks the adoption of India's constitution and the country's transition to a republic on January 26, 1950. The theme of the tableau at the Republic Day Parade 2024 has been decided as Bharat Loktantra Ki Janani, Bharat the Mother of Democracy. This year, the Republic Day Parade is going to be a women-centric event. While interacting with NCC cadets and NSS volunteers, Prime Minister said that Republic Day Parade will be even more special this year.
आप गणतंत्र दिवस के परेड का हिस्सा बनने जा रहे हैं और इस बार ये 2 वजहों से और विशेष हो गया है। ये 75वां गणतंत्र दिवस है और दूसरा, पहली बार गणतंत्र दिवस की परेड देश की नारी शक्ति को समर्पित है।
This year, French President Emmanuel Macron will be the chief guest. A contingent from the French army is also set to participate in the Republic Day Parade. A total of 25 tableaux comprising 16 states and union territories as well as 9 ministries and departments will roll down at Kartavya Path.
We are 130 people who are marching on Kartavya Pass. Those guys are legionnaires from the French-Foreign Legion. There is the music band on the French-Foreign Legion. It's called La Musique de la Légion Étrangère. And then infantry regiment, the 2nd Foreign Infantry Regiment, who's based in south of France. Then there will be 3 planes who will fly, so 2 Rafale and 1 tanker aircraft called Airbus 33M RTT.
Obviously, it is a very great moment for us to be a part of the major day over here. And thank you so much for the Indian government, and thank you so much for our authorities. They make that possibility to come us over here and present something beautiful.
For the first time, the parade will witness an all-women tri-service contingent from the Indian Army, Indian Navy and Air Force marching down the Kartavya Path.
It has been a great opportunity that I have been entrusted with from my superiors, so I am thankful to them.
We have been working for this parade since last 4 months. It has been like a great experience for all of us. As we know, Armed Forces Medical Services consists of the tri-services, in which I am representing the Navy as medical officer. And it feels so grateful that I have been given this opportunity.
I'm honored and privileged to march on the Kartavya Path on 26th of January. It's a golden opportunity for us, and this is the first time in history that medical branch is being represented as a contingent on the Republic Day.
Every year, celebrations marking the day feature spectacular military and cultural pageantry. In the national capital, New Delhi, armed forces personnel march along the Kartavya Path in an elaborate display of military might. The epic show on Kartavya Path eclipses everything else happening across the country on this day. The celebrations, inaugurated with the Grand Parade, are held in the capital from Raisina Hill near the Rashtrapati Bhavan, that is President's House, along the Kartavya Path and onto the historic Red Fort. On this day, ceremonious parades take place at Kartavya Path, which is performed as a tribute to India, its unity in diversity, its rich cultural heritage by the states of the country by building beautiful tableaus. A total of 51 aircraft of the Indian Air Force, including 29 fighter jets and 13 helicopters, are expected to be part of Republic Day flypast. The parade will also witness 100 women artists playing Indian musical instruments for the first time. Ahead of Republic Day celebrations, Delhi undergoes temporary changes affecting traffic and flight movements. Subconventional aerial platforms, including paragliders and unmanned aerial vehicles, are prohibited over Delhi until February 15th. Around 77,000 spectators will witness the parade at Kartavya Path in New Delhi. Aman Kumar Himanshu's report for DD India.
Still to come on DD India News Hour. Tensions escalate on the Korean peninsula as North Korea fires multiple missiles towards the sea off its western coast. Donald Trump cruises to victory in the Republican Party's presidential contest in the U.S. state of New Hampshire. And a look at the life and legacy of the late Karuri Takur, who will be awarded India's highest civilian honor, the Bharatratna.
Turning crisis into opportunity, transforming ideas into action, stories of real change, tales of sustainable solution.
This series is going to tell stories of such change makers.
Watch Change Makers on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. It's been 25 years of the India-France strategic partnership spanning sectors such as defense, civil nuclear energy and space. As the President of France arrives in India for the Republic Day, DD India's Jessica Taneja decodes the Indo-French relations for you.
Invisible reach and instant kill. These Rafale jets with their 150-kilometer strike range can neutralize threats before they even blink. The French-supplied fighter jets enhance India's capability for a two-front war. For decades, France has been India's strategic partner beyond headlines and stealth defense. In May 1998, France defied pressure from its Western partners to fuel India's nuclear dreams, avoided Western sanctions, and even supplied uranium for India's first nuclear power plant. It even refrained from commenting on India's internal affairs.
I thank President Chirac for displaying better understanding of India's position on the question of nuclear test. His stand that economic sanctions will not help has proved to be true.
J'ai été heureux de constater que l'Inde était ouverte à toute solution conforme à ses intérêts, naturellement, et à son rang, et qui permettrait de permettre la non-prolifération dans le monde.
Whether it's former President Jacques Chirac or François Hollande, the enduring strategic partnership between France and India continues to gain momentum based on shared values and aspirations. From building Gaganyaaan's astronaut haven and tracking oil spills to launching satellites.
3, 2, 1, top!
France has been actively supporting India's space ambitions since 43 years. Beyond defense and space cooperation, the Indo-Pacific region takes center stage. French overseas territories generating 93% of its exclusive economic zone provide a strategic vantage point. France and India leverage this unique geopolitical position to assert their positions on global issues such as multilateralism, protection of the global commons, and freedom of navigation. Notably, France was the first country outside India's immediate neighborhood to conduct coordinated naval patrols in the Indian Ocean. Even though both nations commit to working together to ensure that there is no imbalance in the Indo-Pacific and navigate multipolarity together, the driving force of the Indo-Franco relations is in the sovereign realm of strategy and security, where the state's role is greater than the economy. Jessica Taneja for DD India.
And shifting focus to the Indo-Pacific now, North Korea fired multiple cruise missiles towards the sea off its western coast on Wednesday. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said that the missile launches were being analyzed by the South Korean and U.S. intelligence. Tensions have spiked on the Korean peninsula after military maneuvers by the South Korean and U.S. militaries in response to weapons testing by the North. Syed Abdul Hassan has more.
Tension continues to escalate in the Korean peninsula as North Korea fired multiple cruise missiles towards the sea off its west coast on Wednesday. Confirming the launch of missiles, South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said South Korean and US intelligence are analyzing the repercussions in the region. The latest firing of missiles by Pyongyang comes as the South Korean Navy's Special Warfare Unit was taking part in training along the east coast in Gangwon province, bordering the north for 10 days. In a statement, the Joint Chiefs of Staff said, "Our military has increased surveillance and vigilance and is closely coordinating with the United States while monitoring for further signs and activity from North Korea." South Korea has conducted rare defense exercises anticipating direct military strikes on Seoul by North Korea. Last month, over 1,000 South Korean military, police and emergency personnel took part in defense drills in Seoul. Given that the South Korean capital is only 38 kilometers from the military border with the North, it is seen as a vulnerable target. Since the 1953 war, the two Korean nations have been at loggerheads and have continued to develop the latest war equipment to take on each other. The US and Japan are assisting and training South Korean forces for several years. The US has accused Russia of having a hidden military pact with North Korea. Pyongyang's top leaders have been visiting Moscow to strategize wartime military cooperation, while Western nations have recently blamed North Korea for providing firepower to Russian military forces in Ukraine. Mohammad Abdul Hassan reporting for DD India.
Right, moving on, former US President Donald Trump has won in the New Hampshire primary, defeating his lone contender, Nikki Haley. But Haley is not ready to concede defeat just yet, saying that dozens of states are still left for voting in the primaries. Meanwhile, a hearing will take place against Trump in a defamation case on Thursday. Trump is facing several cases, including corruption. Syed Abdul Hassan gets you the latest.
After winning Iowa caucuses, former U.S. President Donald Trump cruised to victory in New Hampshire's Republican presidential contest on Tuesday. Defeating his only remaining rival Nikki Haley, Trump won 54% of votes, while Haley bagged 44% of votes. After Hampshire win, Trump has marched closer to the November rematch. While addressing New Hampshire voters, Trump said that his last remaining competitor in the Republican race, Haley, will be gone after the upcoming primary vote in the northeastern state.
We had a very good competitor, Ron, as you know, Ron DeSantis, and he fought hard and he fought well, and now we have one left. We started off with, really, if you add some Democrats into it, we started off with 13, and now we're down to 2 people. And I think one person will be gone probably tomorrow. And the other one will be gone in November.
Former U.S. Ambassador Nikki Haley is not ready to concede defeat after Hampshire outcome. She had finished third in the Iowa primary last week, and she is lone contender against Donald Trump to be the Republican presidential candidate. Speaking to supporters, Haley said this race is far from over, as dozens of states are left to go.
They're falling all over themselves, saying this race is over. Well, I have news for all of them. New Hampshire is first in the nation. It is not the last in the nation. This race is far from over. There are dozens of states left to go. And the next one is my sweet state of South Carolina.
Donald Trump has been facing several corruption charges, including defamation case filed by American journalist E. Jean Carroll, which is to be heard on Thursday. The ongoing trial concerns additional defamation charges for two statements Donald Trump made in 2019, disparaging Carroll by calling her dishonest and insulting her appearance. Former president had already been held ineligible by Maine Secretary of State for another term because of a section of the U.S. Constitution's 14th Amendment. The provision bars from federal office those who have sworn an oath to support the Constitution and then engaged in insurrection against the U.S. Trump has challenged the verdict in U.S. Supreme Court, and ruling by Apex Court is awaited. Syed Afzarul Hassan for DD India.
Moving on, the battle between Israel and Hamas intensified in Gaza. Israel's military says its forces have encircled the second largest city in the enclave. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu informed the country's parliament that the Israeli counteroffensive will ensure that Hamas will no longer pose a threat to Israel.
Battle between Israel and Hamas intensified near the Gaza border. Israel suffered the highest daily death toll of its Gaza offensive, with 24 fatalities in the rocket-propelled grenade attack in central Gaza on Monday. Soldiers, family and friends attended a military funeral service in Jerusalem on Wednesday. Military spokesperson said that militants fired rockets that collapsed two buildings and killed a group of Israeli soldiers in the Gaza Strip.
The event occurred in a battleground where a militant squad surprised the force with RPG fire. The first rocket hit one of the buildings in which explosives have been laid out. Most of the soldiers died as a result of the explosion and the building collapsed. A second rocket hit a tank which was securing the area, hitting the commander and the fighter who were inside the tank's turret before they were able to shoot back at the militants.
While addressing the Knesset, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Israel would push on with fighting in Gaza to ensure that Gaza will no longer pose a threat to Israel.
In the face of the darkness of the barbarism that was unleashed upon us, we stand like a fortified wall. We have set out the objectives of the war, and they remain in force: to bring about the toppling of Hamas, to bring our home our hostages, all our hostages, and to ensure that Gaza will no longer pose a threat to Israel.
UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned of the spillover risks of the war in Gaza. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu's official goal in the ongoing conflict is the destruction of Hamas. Earlier, he also rejected the two-state solution. Family members of 132 hostages still held by Hamas are protesting and demanding an immediate deal for hostage release. Aman Kumar Himanshu's report for DD India.
Thailand's Constitutional Court on Wednesday ruled that former Prime Ministerial candidate Peter Limjaroenrat was not guilty of violating election law and will retain his parliamentary seat. Peter, a senior figure with the progressive opposition party called Move Forward, had been accused of breaking election law by owning shares in a media company while being a candidate. Move Forward won last year's election but failed to form the government. An online safety bill was passed by Sri Lanka's parliament, backed by a majority of lawmakers despite opposition's concerns. The government justified the action, citing approval from the Attorney General for the bill. The legislation establishes an online safety commission with the aim of safeguarding against online harassment. India's High Commission in Sri Lanka organized a cultural celebration featuring a repertoire of 8 classical Indian dance forms to commemorate the 75th Republic Day at the BMICH Hall in Colombo. The event showcased the talent of artists from India, presenting a captivating performance in Odissi, Kathakali, Manipuri and Satriya. Accomplished artists from Sri Lanka graced the stage with their expertise in Bharatnatyam, Mohiniyattam, Kathak and Kuchipudi. A former Chief Minister of the northern Indian state of Bihar, Karuri Takur, will be posthumously awarded the Bharatratna, the highest civilian award of India. Takur served as the Chief Minister of the state twice and was known for championing reservation for the other backward classes. The next report tells you all about Karuri Takur's life and legacy.
Indian government will confer its highest civilian honor, the Bharatratna, to Karuri Takur posthumously. 24th January 2024 marks the 100th birth anniversary of this stalwart of social justice and an inspiring figure in Indian politics. This prestigious award is a tribute to Karuri Takur's lifelong dedication to the upliftment of the underprivileged sections of society and his relentless fight for social justice. Known affectionately as Jan Nayak or People's Leader, Thakur's simplicity in his personal conduct was highly inspiring, and his contribution to Indian politics has been monumental. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi paid tribute to Jan Nayak Karuri Takur on his birth centenary.
देश ने एक बड़ा निर्णय लिया है। ये निर्णय है जननायक कर्पूरी ठाकुर जी को भारत रत्न देने का। आज की युवा पीढ़ी के लिए कर्पूरी ठाकुर जी के बारे में जानना, उनके जीवन से सीखना बहुत जरूरी है। बेहद गरीबी और सामाजिक असमानता जैसी चुनौतियों से लड़ते हुए वो राष्ट्र जीवन में बहुत ऊंचे मुकाम पर पहुंचे थे।
Karuri Takur has been recognized as a freedom fighter, teacher and politician. He is known as a politician synonymous with social justice and advocating for the socially and economically backward classes in North India. Born in a farmer's family, he chose politics as his career and became the Chief Minister of Bihar twice and Deputy Chief Minister of the state once. Takur strongly opposed the forcibly imposed Indian emergency in the year 1975. Influenced by the time, a non-Congress government was formed in Bihar and Karuri Takur became the Deputy Chief Minister of the state then. The impact of Karuri Takur's policies and initiatives can be seen in the rise of backward politics in Bihar. His work laid the foundation for the empowerment of backward classes, which later influenced the formation of regional parties there. Bureau Report, DD India.
All right, now take a look at some more stories making news around the world. Iran's hardline Guardian Council banned former pragmatist President Hassan Rouhani from standing again in an election in March for the Assembly of Experts, which appoints and can dismiss the supreme leader. Rouhani was elected president in a landslide in 2013 and 2017 on a promise to reduce Iran's diplomatic isolation. A massive fire in a shopping mall prompted authorities in Serbia's capital Belgrade to send 3 helicopters today to douse the flames. No injuries were reported. 76 firefighters and 25 fire tenders fought to put out the blaze. Turkey's parliament approved Sweden's NATO membership bid on Tuesday after more than 4 hours of debate. Lawmakers voted 287 in favor and 55 against, clearing a last major hurdle to expanding the Western military alliance after 20 months of delays. Train services were disrupted at the Edinburgh Waverley station on Wednesday after Storm Jocelyn hit Scotland. Train services were suspended until late morning on Wednesday while Network Rail Scotland inspected tracks for damage following the storm, as per Scottish operator ScotRail. Jocelyn marks the 10th named storm of the season to hit the UK. And still to come on DD India News Hour. A discussion on India's quest for a permanent UN Security Council seat. India's Prime Minister to hold the 7th edition of Pariksha Pe Charcha on 29th January. And 24th January is International Day of Education. A look at how India is celebrating the day.
Turning crisis into opportunity, transforming ideas into action, stories of real change, tales of sustainable solution.
This series is going to tell stories of such change makers.
Watch Change Makers on DD India.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. Going back to the top story, the visiting president of the UN General Assembly says it is high time India became a permanent UN Security Council member. Now, India has been pushing for reform of the world body for years on end now. India believes that UN reform is not complete without changing the composition of the Security Council in both the permanent and non-permanent categories. Mr. Dilip Sinha joins us from New Delhi. Mr. Sinha is a former Indian ambassador to the UN in Geneva and Greece. He is the author of Legitimacy of Power, The Permanence of Five in the Security Council, published in 2018. Ambassador Sinha, welcome to DD India News Hour. Now, first up, everybody agrees that UN Security Council reform is long overdue. So, what's stopping the UN from reforming itself? Where is it stuck and why?
Well, as the UN Secretary General said recently in an address to General Assembly, that reform is about power. And we know that the Security Council is all about the control of the five big powers over the Council. And we know that some of these big powers are opposed to any reform in the Security Council because they fear that their privileges and their powers will get diluted because of the entry of new members. So the primary obstacle to reform of the UN Security Council is this, the fear of any change in the status quo by the existing powers in the Security Council. Then, of course, there's the other issue of galvanizing the large membership in the General Assembly, which is 193 members, and one requires the support of 2/3 of the members for this, including the support of each of the 5 permanent members. And that itself is not an easy task today in the extremely polarized and also diversified world that we have today, where there are different countries. There is the African Union, which is not able to reach consensus on who will represent Africa in the Reformed Security Council, because, as you know, Africa is has 53, 54 members, and these countries form the subject matter of the largest number of resolutions of the Security Council, and yet Africa also does not have a representative as a permanent member in the Security Council. So these issues all put together, they have held up the reform of the Security Council.
Ambassador Sinha, as a report mentioned at the top of the broadcast, Elon Musk, the founder and owner of Tesla, SpaceX and X, says India not having a permanent UNSC seat is quote-unquote absurd. Now, my question to you is this. If Musk understands it, why can't, say, someone like Xi Jinping?
Well, it is one of those interesting things where the whole world is now saying that the Security Council needs reform, and in that reform, India, which is the most populous country in the world and the largest democracy, must find representation, because no international organization can claim to be a representative organization of the world today of the current geopolitical realities unless it includes India. And yet, as China is completely opposed to India's membership, China, as you know, was not originally a permanent member of the Security Council. The People's Republic wasn't. People's Republic became a member merely by a General Assembly resolution. It replaced Taiwan or the Republic of China in 1971, and then it became a permanent member. And ever since has been ensuring two things. One is that India does not become a permanent member, and the other that Taiwan does not become a member of the Security of the UN. So these power games that are played by the big powers has become a hindrance to not only the reform of the Security Council, but also its efficacy. In the last 3-4 years, the UN Security Council has seen more vetoes than ever since the Cold War ended. And the Security Council today faces a problem not only of its reform, but of its relevance itself. And the Secretary General himself has recently, in his address to the General Assembly, said that global governance is stuck in time. And he had said earlier that the UN Charter and the values it represents are in jeopardy. And this is a very serious comment to come from the UN Secretary General, who's a very experienced political leader and world leader. And he realizes that the challenge for the UN today is not just reform of the Security Council, but the very relevance and the existence of the Security Council in the form in which it is today, where it cannot take action in its primary function of maintaining international peace and security. Today, the world is seeing more armed conflicts than ever in the history of the UN. And yet the Security Council is unable to address the resolutions on the major wars that are taking place in the world. Those resolutions then get taken up in the General Assembly, but the General Assembly, whose president is currently visiting India and supporting the idea of UN Security Council reform, is unable to act because its resolutions are not binding.
Ambassador Sinha, India's External Affairs Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar says the UN Summit of the Future to be hosted this year should serve as a serious opportunity to drive change, champion fairness and reform multilateralism, including the expansion of the Security Council memberships. India is clearly in a hurry, and perhaps rightly so. Is India's patience inexhaustible?
Well, India's patience is certainly not inexhaustible, but India can do very little about it because the UN Charter is framed in such a way that there is a stranglehold over any reform in the UN Charter unless the permanent five, each of the permanent five, agrees. And the summit that is coming up is extremely important, but we have had two other summits, the Millennium Summit that took place in the year 2000, and then the summit in the year 2005, which was the 60th anniversary of the UN, in which India made a very strong bid along with the other three G4 members, Japan, Brazil, and Germany. But eventually the resolution was not pressed for a vote because in Africa there was no consensus on the African representation, as a result of which India had to take into account these geopolitical realities and hold back on the resolution. And that problem will come up even now. But the real problem is that as a result of the UN Security Council not including countries like India, the Security Council itself is losing its relevance. And today, the main peace efforts, whether in Ukraine or in the Gaza war, are taking place outside the UN, and it's the other countries that are trying to bring about peace. That there are consultations taking place among different countries, but the UN itself and the Security Council in particular is simply deadlocked. So it's a question of the UN's survival rather than India's membership of it that is really the challenge before the UN today.
Indeed. Ambassador Sinha, what does India want to see happen? 1, India as a permanent UN Security Council member. 2, with a veto. 3, more non-permanent members, or all of the above?
I would say all of the above, because India is not only advocating its own membership, but along with it, the membership of the 3 other G4 countries that I just mentioned. In addition, India wants 2 seats for Africa in the permanent category, and an overall expansion of the non-permanent seats as well. This will ensure that the Security Council starts representing the current geopolitical realities. As the Secretary General himself had said, that the world has changed, but the UN institutions have not. And that is what India wants to see happen, that Africa gets due representation, as, for example, it did in the case of the G20, where it got the African Union to come in. Now, that could be a possible way out for Security Council reform, where the African Union could be the representative of Africa. But that, of course, will depend upon the negotiations that take place in the UN. But the way forward would have to be something like that, which enables the African countries to come to a consensus on their representation. And then, of course, the G4, which is the right. 4 major powers that are not yet permanent members, that could bring about a compromise, which could bring about change and the expansion of the Security Council in both categories, permanent and non-permanent.
And finally, very quickly, if you will, Ambassador Sinha, could you give our viewers an overview of India's association with the UN since its inception? We are told India was a founding member at the 1945 San Francisco Conference, and India is also the largest troop contributing country, is it not?
Yes, India in fact has played a stellar role in the UN in the UN itself. India played a very prominent role in when the San Francisco Conference took place in 1945, where India, although not an independent country, had a representative there who played a very active role in the formulation of the charter and made some very useful suggestions, including on how the UN reform could take place after a period of 10 years. So the charter itself provided for a conference to take place after 10 years to reform the UN. Thereafter, once the UN was formed, then India spearheaded 2 very important movements, one for decolonization, because 2/3 of the world population was at that time under colonial rule, and the other was against apartheid in South Africa. And India then also spearheaded the non-aligned movement. Then India moved forward on the new international economic order, and the new information order. All these were important contributions of India. And then when the UN Security Council was not able to get a UN army because of the opposition of the permanent members, and the first Secretary General, Trygve Lie, and thereafter Dag Hammarskjöld, came up with the idea of UN peacekeeping forces, then India became one of the prime supporters of the UN peacekeeping forces, and India has participated in the largest number of UN peacekeeping forces, also contributed historically the largest number of peacekeepers, and also shaped the very idea of peacekeeping, especially in the time of the Congo crisis in 1960. So since then, India has been active in all spheres of the UN's work, and it continues to do so. And this is one of the major reasons why India feels that it is a legitimate claim to become a permanent member of the Security Council.
All right. On that note, Ambassador Dilip Sinha, thank you. And thank you for joining us and sharing your thoughts and insights with our viewers at home and abroad. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Right. Now take a look at some other stories making news in India. India's Directorate General of Civil Aviation has conducted the highest number of oversight measures in the past year to enhance safety standards in the aviation industry. It conducted a staggering 5,745 surveillances, which is an all-time high. On the basis of enforcement actions, financial penalties were imposed on airlines. The Halwa ceremony, which marks the final stage of the preparation for presentation of India's 2024 budget, was held at the North Block on Wednesday in the presence of Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman and Minister of State Dr. Bhagwat Kisan Rao Karad. The customary ceremony is performed every year before the lock-in process of the budget preparation begins. India's Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar launched the Hamara Samvidhan, Hamara Samman campaign of the Ministry of Law and Justice in New Delhi to commemorate the 75th year of India as a republic. The Vice President said that the nation is remembering the heroes who were forgotten. India's cabinet on Wednesday approved the proposal for signing of a protocol for establishment of Joint Economic and Trade Committee between the Department of Commerce under the India's Ministry of Commerce and Industry and Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Dominican Republic. The cabinet also approved an MOU signed on 15th December last year between India and Oman on cooperation in the field of information technology. The MOU intends to promote comprehensive cooperation between two countries through mutual support and investments in the field of information technology. The cabinet also approved the scheme for promotion of coal lignite gasification projects of government PSUs and private sector towards incentive for coal gasification projects under 3 different categories. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi is set to hold the 7th edition of Pariksha Pe Charcha on 29th January. The Pariksha Pe Charcha means a discussion and examination in Hindi. Like previous years, the Prime Minister will interact with students, teachers and parents to ease the pressure of exams on the students of classes 10 and 12 in particular. Dibyendu Mondal has more.
The 7th edition of Pariksha Pe Charcha has gained massive momentum across the country. More than 10 million registrations to attend the program has already been done by students, teachers and parents from across the country. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is all set to address a large gathering at the iconic Bharat Mandapam on January the 29th and discuss with students on ways to deal with exam stress. Started in 2018, Pariksha Pe Charcha is an engaging conversation by Prime Minister Narendra Modi with the student community, aiming to reduce the exam stress amongst the young minds. The engaging conversation between the students and the Prime Minister also dwells into strategies to counter stress and to attend examinations with confidence. The student community every year look forward to this engaging conversation with the Prime Minister, as this has proven to be raising self-confidence among students who are to appear for their board examinations.
Pariksha Pe Charcha, that has been really a good opportunity for me to learn a lot of tips and tricks to deal with the stress, and till date, I really understood what it is to deal with the stress actually in matters. So it really helped me a lot and it was a golden opportunity for me.
What PM has told us is that stress is normal. It is no big deal. It happens to all. But the most important thing is that we have to learn to face exams without thinking it as a big deal. Rather, it should be taken as a big opportunity to prove our learning and knowledge.
The Prime Minister, during his conversations with the students, have always emphasized on a healthy mind and well-being of the students and have often advised students to put in their best effort and not to worry about the final result. This has led to students overcoming the fear of final result and putting in their best effort. The engaging conversation of the students with the Prime Minister over the last few years have led to better performance amongst the students across the country. This remarkable program has made every student of India from exam fearing to an exam warrior. Dibyendu Mondal's report for DD India.
24th January is celebrated as the International Day of Education. Education is UNESCO's top priority because it's a basic human right and a foundation for peace and sustainable development. DD India's Kriti Vadhera reports.
Education is a human right, a powerful driver of development, and one of the strongest instruments for reducing poverty, gender equality, peace, and stability. The new Education Policy 2020 aims at more dynamic and responsive education system.
The new National Education Policy 2020 and now the NCFSE 23 that has come in is one of the most promising visions that have ever come into the education. Gone are the days when you would tell the children that this is the syllabus, study this, these are the questions which will be asked, and this is how you have to answer. Today, the canvas of the child has expanded. He can creatively think and answer what he wants to. And the children are brighter than us. The child has become very important. The teacher has taken a back seat because these children are born with the technology. They are the natives of technology. We are the migrants. But they are the natives of technology and they know how to leverage and how to use the technology.
India is appearing as a global leader in ICT. Educational technology plays an important role in the improvement of educational processes and outcomes. Young minds are growing confidence while using digital gadgets in classrooms.
I like to come to digital literacy class. I love to play with iPads and digital literacy class is good.
Educators find it convenient to integrate digital devices into the teaching and learning process.
The integration of technology helps us to create an aha moment in our class. It's a kind of joyful learning. The students learn a lot because once they do the thing, it is learning by doing when we come to the technology. And as people are born in the technology era, they are born with iPads.
It is more interactive for the kids. Like with the display, with the digital display, they are very much engaged with the subject and the content.
NEP 2020 is a comprehensive framework and outlining of India's vision and approach to education reform. Comprehensive approach of new Education Policy 2020 has revamped the education system in India, emphasizing flexibility, creativity, and giving it a holistic approach towards learning. With camera person Rajesh Kumar, I am Kruti Vadhera, reporting from New Delhi for DD India.
India and Russia discussed a new maritime corridor between Chennai and Vladivostok. India's Minister for Shipping, Ports and Waterways, Sarbananda Sonobal, highlighted India's commitment to enhancing trade and security along the corridor and emphasized infrastructure development and collaborative efforts across ministries.
On the part of the Government of India, we have been taking adequate measures so that maritime security can be ensured for the commercial vessels movement, seamless movement. So that way, our concerned ministry is taking adequate initiative in this regard. And this particular Eastern Maritime Corridor will be a very, very important alternative to this kind of situation. And this is definitely going to provide us a lot of scope and to continue our seamless movement of our cargo vessels to those targeted destinations.
The Vixat Bharat Sankalp Yatra is being undertaken across India with the aim to inform people about government welfare measures by ensuring that their benefits reach the targeted beneficiaries in a time-bound manner. The Yatra reached Kadhai Kodhara in Kankar district of the Indian state of Chhattisgarh. The local communities responded to it with much enthusiasm. School children, along with other village residents and government officials, participated in the event. And now to all the news from the world of sport. To tennis first, Rohan Bopanna of India made Grand Slam history as he progressed to the semi-finals of the Australian Open men's doubles event. Bopanna and his partner Matthew Ebden reached the semis with a straight sets win over the Argentine pair of Maximo Gonzalez and Andre Molteni. Bopanna has become world #1 for the first time at the age of 43. India beat Poland in the inaugural edition of the FIH Hockey Fives Women's World Cup in Muscat, the capital of Oman. India, led by its goalkeeper Rajani Etimarpu, defeated Poland 5-4. For India, Khan Mumtaz and Deepika Soreng scored 2 goals each, while Kujur Mariana netted once. The Indian women's team is included in Pool C alongside the US, Poland and Namibia. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of DD India News Hour. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram. You can also check out our website ddindia.co.in. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran. From all of us here in New Delhi, thanks for watching DD India News Hour.